Okay, we'll get started here. 6 o'clock, and I don't want to use up any more of your time. The taxes and retirement, does that sound like everybody in the right place? They're about to start some cheerleading practice downstairs, I think. Oh no, it sounds like basketball now. It's cheerleading on Tuesday. Before we get into the details, why are we here? An interesting situation. For the past 46 years, which is about when the 401k was invented, financial professionals have been telling people your taxes will go down in retirement. And for 46 years, that's mostly been the case. Because of that, we created an entire universe of tax-deferred retirement savings plans. We'll recognize some of these names: IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, it goes on and on. KEOs, ESOPs. So tax deferred, that's a brilliant concept. Pay no tax now, let the money grow, and then pay tax when you take it out. And it did grow. Retirement assets have exploded. So if we look from 1974 to 2021, $30 trillion now in retirement accounts, tax deferred. But today things have changed. Where are we at today? We look at the 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act during the Trump administration. Individual tax rates were cut. I would venture to guess most people in this room saw a substantial decline, a high percentage. So anywhere from 2.5% at the top, and you even have that 20 to 24%, so up to a 4% decrease in some of these tax brackets. And of course, that's progressive, so as you earn more, you get into another bracket and it takes some of that at a higher rate. But these only last through 2025. Another part of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act where corporate tax rates were cut a lot. Flat rate went from 35 to 21%. That's huge. What's the difference here? Those changes are permanent. But now the U.S. budget deficit doubled in the past 3 years, more now. Federal debt, 79% of gross domestic product, projected to be 144% by 2049. Higher than any time in U.S. history, even higher than post-World War II. And if tax cuts are extended in 2025, debt could go up to 219% of GDP. And what does that really mean? Let's look at it from another point of view. Imagine your income was $100,000 and then you owed $219,000 on your credit cards. That's what our government has gotten us into. Those numbers were all before the trillions of dollars for the COVID aid package. What does all that mean, though? The government needs money. And you're sitting on $30 trillion. So for the first time in 46 years, it's possible that your taxes in retirement could go up. More than just a chance. And if not a direct tax increase, then we know how government works. It's the other ones. So increased fees on programs like Medicare and Medicaid, higher taxes on your Social Security. Right now, we all know and we've heard Social Security Trust Fund runs out, what, 2031, 2033, somewhere in there. How are they gonna start, if nothing's done, across the board cuts down to around 75, 76% of benefits. That's the default. It would impact everybody. Do we expect politicians to do something? Older people vote compared to younger people, so they've got to do something, right? But if they don't, that's what it is. It's across the board. But there's some easy pickings here that are going to affect everybody. Right now, what's the most of your Social Security that can be taxed? For some people, it's zero. If you only get Social Security, it's zero. Anybody know the top % of your Social Security that can be taxed?
85.
85%, right? Where do you think it's gonna happen here in a few years? That's going to 100 for some people. That's an easy one. Lower thresholds for taxation, so those tax brackets I showed that were 10, 12%, they can just lower the rate at which you get into those next ones. It's a lot easier and less flashy to do those kind of things because us, the public, have to do the calculation. And so the media can't show us exactly how much that is. Those are the kind of things that they're gonna hit us with. And then reduced or extended benefits. Another big one that you don't probably hear too much about unless you're impacted by it, and then you know it really well, changes to inheritance rules. The Secure Act, the first one that came across, and we'll talk about that later, but it used to be, if you pass away and you have an IRA or a 401k and it hasn't been taxed yet, and it passes on to your kids, they had what was called a stretch IRA. And so they could withdraw that over the course of their lifetime, their estimated lifespan, and spread those taxes out. And now they got rid of that stretch IRA, and so now it's currently at 10 years. The only thing that we're not sure of yet is whether you have to withdraw some every year, or if you can just wait until that 10th year and take it all out at the same time. IRS just punted that a couple months ago and said, okay, if you haven't taken anything, you're not gonna owe any penalty, but they're expected to eventually issue, hey, do you have to take that equally? But no free lunch. If you wait until the last year, you take it all, you're gonna be in a huge tax bracket. So there's no winning on that. We'll talk more about that later. So that's why we are here, taxes and retirement. And you obviously think it's important because you showed up here on a fall day. Not much to be done outside today, but it's still taking your time out, so you know how it could impact you. I'm preaching to the choir here. So this is titled The 4 Stages of Retirement, taxes through those 4 stages. And this is put on by 567 Workshops, and they're responsible. They have the taxes in retirement, also Social Security, estate planning are other ones we hold, and there's just no in between. There's no education given. Otherwise, where do you go to find out about this stuff? Maybe the internet. So I am a financial advisor with Van Clemens, and on the side I work or partner with 567 Workshops. I live in Bismarck. I also have a lot of clients in Minot, which is why I'm here, Williston. And why you have that fancy folder here that gets all the fingerprints, the Energy Industry Advisor. So when I started, I initially had a corporate career with MDU Resources. And so when I left there, I've done a lot of retirement planning for MDU, WBI Energy, the marathons. And so I have a side labeled business with Energy Industry Advisors and helping them with their retirement plans. And now I do it for all pre and in retirees. Some other things, let's look at what's in this folder. So there's really some great info. I pulled out some of my favorites, and this can get pretty heavy, so I know you'll probably read some of this at home. But keep in mind, at some point before you leave tonight, when you do leave, hand this out to Danielle at the entrance, and let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like covered, what wasn't covered, or what wasn't clear, because that's the only way we can change it in the future. And then we'll go over some, since we have to keep this in general and can't provide specific personal advice, you do have the option to ask me questions, your own personal questions later on. And I'll also stay after if anybody wants to hit me up with some questions before they leave. All right, so housekeeping. Everybody know the bathroom is just down the hall where your entrance. I have to apologize about that taxes sign out there. That's my drawing. That looks really professional. But we find out that a lot of people were going to the other door, so we needed to quick put some, and then nothing worse than going to, somebody told us this was the 5th door we tried, so that's why you got the, looks like the 5th grader drew it. I didn't want to pin that on Danielle, that was all me. On your way out, we will have copies of these slides. We hand them out right away, but then everybody reads ahead and doesn't pay attention. So if you're taking notes, you don't have to write down exactly what's on the slides. You can take those with. The agenda, we will definitely be done within that 90 minutes. We should be early so I can stick around. So we'll go through the presentation. During that, we'll have a chance for some questions that you want to ask in front of everybody, or if there's some general questions. Then we'll close with some action steps and things to consider as you finish planning your retirement and how those taxes can impact that. Let's see. Well, I think with that, we can move forward. Any questions? All right, let's jump into it. So some disclaimers. So this is considered tax planning, not tax advice. Tax advice is specific to your accountant or CPA and what goes on your return. So in essence, that's saying, don't take what I say, put it on your tax return. The IRS isn't going to be able, you're not going to be able to say, well, Josh told me I could do that. So always check with your tax accountant. And I do prepare some tax returns, and then you can point directly at me. So what are some things we're going over here? Traditional IRAs, 401ks, those ones that we listed before, those are the ones that go in pre-tax. You pay taxes or distributions or conversions at ordinary federal and state rates. So something to keep in mind with those 401ks, not like when you just buy a stock in a brokerage account, where when it comes out you might have capital gains at a lot better rate. Anything comes out of your tax deferred, it's going to be at your ordinary federal and state rates. So the Roth IRA, that's really kicked up in the last, well, it's been around for over 20 years, but the Roth 401k is newer. So those you don't get a tax deduction at the beginning when you put those in, but if you meet a few qualifications, then you can take those out, the earnings, tax-free. And you can always take out what you put in there tax-free at any time for any reason. Another thing to keep in mind, state taxes. We're going to focus on federal because state taxes are their own thing. Don't usually have quite as much impact as federal taxes, but always keep that in the back of your mind. So a new complex world. Frankly, it was easier when you were in the accumulation phase. Because what's the most important thing when you're accumulating? Do it regularly, have it taken out of your paycheck, don't think about it. And if you can, don't jump into your IRA or 401k and reallocate it. That's the long and the short of that. It's a little bit easier. But once you hit retirement, you have a lot more to consider. There's just a lot more moving pieces. You no longer have the child tax credits, no mortgage interest deduction, which with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, they raised that standard deduction, so most people don't qualify for a mortgage interest deduction anyways. You don't have that tax-free employer medical insurance, and you're not contributing to the 401k or something similar that was giving you that tax deduction every year. Now what are you looking at? New things like Social Security, which we talked about. Are you paying it on all of it, none of it? If you go over those limits, like around $21,000 before you hit your full retirement age, they're gonna dock you $1 for every $2 you earn. RMDs, required minimum distributions. I know for a fact that when you first retire, thinking about something that's going to happen, it used to be 70 and a half, but with Secure, they moved that to 73 and eventually 75. You have to withdraw a certain amount from these accounts based on your life expectancy. And that just 73 and 75 seems like a long ways away when you're 60 or 62 and you're thinking, oh, well, I have to withdraw a certain amount. Fine, I'll take it, I'll spend it. But then all of a sudden, those are the years Maybe you have a little bit of land and you want to sell it, or you're selling your house to an heir, and so you have more income, and then you don't get a choice with your RMD. You have to take that as well, and those are the years where it jumps you into that higher tax bracket. So RMDs, big deal, a real big deal. You have to consider paying for Medicare. Tuesday we had some great discussion on this where, God, if I can just get to Medicare age, and then you get to Medicare and, well, that's not free either, right? If you got, I'm sure, yeah, I see your head shaking. Medicare Advantage isn't free, the Medigap policies aren't free, and if you have a large bill, you're still gonna pay some. And then long-term care. This is that somebody told us on Tuesday that their husband actually now in a nursing home, not the Alzheimer's units, all physical. $16,000 a month coming out of their IRAs to pay for it. I mean, just to see that flow out, $4,000 a week. That's crazy. So you think I say, well, you better get some long-term care. Well, everybody who'd gotten long-term care 20 years ago, if you did and it was locked in, you were maybe okay, but we probably all know somebody who got long-term care and then they jacked the rates up on that. And so you paid for it for maybe 10 or 15 years, and then you had to drop it because it got too expensive before you even got to the age you needed to use it. Now they've kind of changed that. Most policies related to long-term care are life insurance with a long-term care rider. It's kind of a way, it doesn't sound like it, but kind of a way to simplify it, and it's easier for you to qualify for the underwriting when it's linked to life insurance. But I think I've read anywhere from 80 to 90% now. There's not many of those traditional policies out there. So there's rules of thumb. Those are, I usually don't say a rule of thumb, but long-term care might make sense for somebody who has, say, $600,000 to $1 million, maybe a little more than that, depending on what their expenses are. Because if you have more than that, you're still better off just paying it yourself when the time comes. And if you're lower, well, I know plenty of people who say, drop me off at the veterans home, hide some whiskey in my back pocket, and kick me out the door. Because then it's more a matter of moving your assets around. You hear about people, my parents just 2 months ago, they quitclaim deed their house over to all of us kids, right? So they get that 5-year clock ticking in case they need to go into the nursing home and Medicaid. That's the 5-year look back. Problem, people often pay more taxes in retirement than expected because a confusing system treats various income types differently and contains hidden taxes and penalties. That tell you something you don't know, right? But developing a solution, because your tax exposure will change through those 4 stages of retirement, which we'll get to in a minute, you'll need a strategy that anticipates both those traditional taxes and then the possible taxes, surcharges, and penalties related to that, Social Security, Medicare, and other income. Had somebody bring up the IRMA surcharges, which we'll hit on in a little bit. But a lot of people don't know about the IRMA, which is income-related monthly adjustment amounts. Long story short, if you make above just $1 above a certain amount, now your Part B and Part D jump. And so they had properties to unload because some of us are real estate investors. And you take the depreciation, but then when it comes time and you want to get rid of them, that's when you got to pay. So how do you unload those and not get yourself in another tax bracket and pay IRMA? Those are all things you want to think of in advance before that time comes. 4 stages of retirement. These are just rough guides, but age 50 to 60, hopefully your higher earning years, usually you're working safe, you're just dollar cost averaging in, not usually too much to think about, but it's a good time to start thinking about, hey, do I want to put some of this into a Roth post-tax? Now those are just in the last few years, you've had that option at work where they unrolled the Roth 401k. Then you hit the early retirement, 60 to 70. You see the three, the go-go, the slow-go, the no-go is what they label those. But 60 to 70, then 70 to 80, 80 plus. And I don't like to consider that mean slow. What does that mean? But it's more how likely is it that you're going to spend more? You're probably going to spend more in early retirement because you're doing things that are more expensive. It doesn't mean you're not having fun or you're just sitting in the old folks' home necessarily. So it's more about the spending patterns. Retirement surprises, inflation. Boy, I mean, if I had to put this on here 2 years ago, we'd all just glaze over it, who cares? But now we've seen what can happen when you try and inject the economy with another few $1 trillion, and we do hit that. So we're all pleased that we got our money markets and our treasuries earning 5.5%, that's great, but were we really